It's the mystery gripping the world. An airliner vanishes without trace.
There has been nothing remotely like MH370 in the modern era.
For the families, the agony of not knowing.
No family should ever have to undergo day after day of not knowing whether their loved one is alive.
Is this a new and deadly threat?
If this is a cyber hijack, it's not only a significant new form of warfare, it fits the pattern of where warfare is going.
Flight MH370. 14 days that gripped the world.
The disappearance of Flight 370 is not a game changer, it's a world changer.
Hi, and welcome back. It's the 20th of July 2014, and as that gentleman just said there, guys, it is not just a game changer, it is a world changer. What really took place on that day that the first Flight 370, when it went missing, was, I believe, just the start of many more things like this to come. I would classify it in the same compartment, if you like, as 9/11, the Twin Towers attack, and how that was used as a precursor to start the war with Iraq. So this aircraft takes off 370, goes missing for months. Countries from all over the world engage in searching for it, and then recently we have Flight 17 from Malaysian Airlines explode in the skies above the Ukraine, landing 25 miles away from the Russian border, and within 45 minutes of the awareness of this, we have the Americans, not the American people, by the way, the American corporate government right now blaming the Russians for the downing of that jet. Now, one of these 777-200s goes missing, and one of them ends up in a field in the Ukraine war theatre that's taking place right now with East Ukraine and the rest of Ukraine. And if you ask me, do I think that 370 is the exact same flight as Flight 17? I have to say yes. So you might say, well, how can that be then, when we've seen distraught families in Amsterdam declaring that they had relatives on board this plane when it was downed? Well, we've also seen in the Boston bombings actors playing the roles of victims, and other people on channels such as those that you may know, Darbu and this, that and the other, have looked into them, and they have debunked these false flag events. So what I'm saying here, guys, is that Flight 17 appears to be 370, and it's that Occam's razor thing. What tends to be the simplest tends to be the true. If you ask me, is Flight 17 370? I'd say yes, it is, and for other reasons as well. Now, in a couple of videos I did go on this subject, I suggested that when 370 had taken off, the transponders were removed, and that aircraft was taken up to probably a maximum ceiling that it was able to fly at, and then the passenger compartment was depressurized, and in doing that the passengers suffocated, basically killing all on board that plane. It was then probably landed at one of the most secretive air bases in the world, which would be very likely Diego Garcia, and the bodies would have been removed, and they would have been stored possibly in refrigerated compartments until recently, when they was put back on that plane. It was probably rescheduled to fly to a few other destinations before it landed in Amsterdam, and then it took off from Amsterdam on its final flight, whereby it was shot down over the Ukraine. and used as a false flag against against Russia. The reason why I say this is because the rebels in the east of Ukraine, when they approached the plane, before they got to the plane, they could smell decomposing bodies. So that means that they wasn't freshly killed. The other thing that they noted is that these bodies didn't have any blood spilling out them. Well, they wouldn't have. And the other thing is that from the video footage that I've actually seen, they look like mannequins. Well, this is what you get after, freezing a body, I suppose, and then putting it back on a plane in different clothes, loading the plane up so it did look like it had just left Amsterdam, and the people that were on board it was from Amsterdam. But I'm unsure as to whether anybody did board that plane from Amsterdam. Like I say, I think, it is speculation only, because I don't think anyone can accurately say what happens in these grand false flag plans. Know for sure. If anyone did board from Amsterdam on that plane, and because the first thing you would have noticed, if that plane had been carrying over 200 corpses, would have been the stink of it. And would they have even opened the door on that plane, to allow other passengers on board that plane, if there was still room for passengers to get on board? And would the passengers would have immediately noticed there's something wrong with the smell of this aircraft, even if other compartments of the plane was, screened off, the curtains was drawn to stop people boarding, right at the other end of the plane, like usual. You probably get on just beyond the door of the cockpit, and you move your way down to the back of the plane, taking up your seat numbers. Now, they may have let some people on board, I don't know, but I don't think they would have. And when that plane took off, it was definitely shot down for a purpose. Now, I say it is I do believe it is Flight 370, and the people that were on board that plane were the original people from Flight 370. And this has been planned for 4 months now, is it, when Flight 370 originally went missing? But with what was reported on the ground, that you could smell where the aircraft crash was before you got on top of it, is a clear sign that there was already decomposing bodies on there. And I don't think that would have been the case. I've also discussed it with a few other people that have looked at the footage on the ground with regards to the condition of the bodies. And I'm no mortician and I'm no medical expert, but one thing you do notice that there is no blood. The bodies do look like they have decomposed there. They could be damaged in any case, but I'm just saying that rigor mortis in some of those bodies had already set in before the bodies hit the ground, and you could see that because there is at least a few bodies where their arms are frozen in an upright position. Now, what would have happened, I would have thought, in a normal crash is that these bodies would have the limbs would have been laid down and not frozen in the positions that they was. And in that footage that we've seen, there was also bodies with black lips. Again, I don't think. Well, it could be. I'm not an expert on this, but I just think the bodies looked like they'd already died, and that fits the description of those rebels that got to the plane very early on after that crash happened. So why would they want to do that? I think it's it's a retaliation. First of all, they wanted to blame the Russians for this flight being downed, perhaps to put troops, NATO troops, in the Ukraine and closer to the Russian border. And I believe, I do believe, like people say, Russia, Obama and Putin are very best of friends, and this is nothing more than the plans falling into alignment with each other for whatever purpose that could be. It could be this new world order, and what I reckon, this charade is being caused by, first of all, is they wanted to blame the Russians for something, and what it was, in my view, it was on the back of the Russian president opening a global bank with the BRICS nations. You see, I think what they've done is they've took all they could out of the EU as far as draining it of its wealth, and they have had to move on. There is no wealth in the EU, and there is very little wealth now in the United States, and what they're doing is now they're moving their wealth into this BRICS global bank, and this is exactly what they do. They need two sides to to win this, so you weaken one and you strengthen the other. By weakening one you profit, and by strengthening the other you profit again. So it's quids in all round for these people. Who are we talking about? I think we're talking about the same people that attend these Bilderberg meetings. They plan things well in advance. They don't let the public know what it is they're planning, because I'm pretty sure that none of us would agree to using civilian aircraft in this manner. Anyone that's of anything or have got anything about them would think this was just a complete and utter disgusting act of murder. And this is the same as what happened at 9/11. They needed a precursor to go into Iraq. Well, that attack in New York, blaming it on, again, terrorists. And the other thing is here again, guys, you remember how fast they found the passports of these terrorists that were responsible, supposedly, for crashing these planes into the Twin Towers? Again, these brand new passports turn up unscratched, unscathed, unmarked, on these in this crash site. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to set, strip these bodies before you put them back on this plane of their original clothing, put new clothing on them that is suited to where they've just flown from, in this case Amsterdam, and the cameras were very quick to get a picture of that t-shirt that says "I love Amsterdam" on it, to set the stage, to plant the seed in your mind that this actually was filled with Europeans and not, as was the original case in Flight 370. I just think, I don't think it's beyond conspiracy to think that these two planes was the same, and this is exactly what's going on in the world. So, in short, the plane was dropped over the Ukraine to blame the Russians for dropping it, so that they could bring in the NATO troops into this arena where the Ukraine is, move the troops up closer. It's just a smokescreen, because it's just a diversion of attention, because since this has happened, we've seen nothing about it, about the Gaza Strip and the land invasion which is taking place in this, as well as other things which are moving, such as, no one seems to be mentioning, whilst this is taking the diversion of our attention, no one's talking about the fact that on the Mexican border they're now being shot at by 50 cal rounds, and the border patrol is asking for help to secure the border, and we know that they've not got no ammunition down there, and they've been told they're not going to get no more ammunition till 2015. So this is being designed, these things are. It's just the sad state of the world affairs at the moment. It is a global problem, and it's becoming even more that, as the days goes on, these problems are accelerating. And I think, I was talking about this. What is the overall plan then for the New World Order? And is there any signs of this actually taking place? Well, these things such as Flight 370 and 317 and the Twin Towers are just mechanisms in this plan, which have obviously been on the cards for some time. But what is the purpose of this plan? And can we see signs of this actually taking place? Well, I think yes, we can. It is to devalue the living standards of the Western world, increase the living standards of the Eastern world, bringing them up to a level par, so therefore there will be at some point in the future no point to import or export products such as cars, because it will be no cheaper to build cars in Taiwan as opposed to it will be in the United States or other parts of Europe. And once they have established that global currency and its global worth, we'll pretty much all be slaves at that point. I think that is the bottom line. It is to balance out currencies worldwide, make them make a pound worth in one country the exact same in another, and at the same time these rich elitists will still be on top of the game, enjoying all of what life has to offer, whilst we'll be having to put up with further expenditure to the cost of our daily living, with food prices increasing, insurance, and making it illegal if you don't have certain insurances, as is what is happened now. And this was never what we was told life would be when we grew up. I mean, I'm 41. I was told that when I got to this age, when I was a younger person, that by the time I got to this age, I would only probably have to work 3 days a week, and it would most likely be working from home. And that's the truth of that is so opposite. The reality is you're working 6 days a week, you still haven't got enough to pay the bills off, and this is getting worse and worse, and the poorest of the countries are being trodden into the ground, and no one seems to turn a blind eye about it because they've got their own problems to worry about. And there is a planned effort to weaken communities by bringing in immigrants to the communities, and we see this falling away, especially over here in the UK. If you live in the city, you've only got to look out your window and notice everyone's put 6-foot fences up. It's because they don't want to know what anybody else is up to, so long as they are being left alone. That is the conditioning that has been put on people here in the UK and rest of the world. In most places, we are segregating ourselves off, as opposed to being active members of parts of the community, and strengthening our own community by doing those things, by mixing in the community and being part of the community. It doesn't seem to happen. They're weakening religion, because I believe religion is a good community program that keeps people participating in something together, but that is on the decline again. It's just a sad state of affairs. I'm pretty sure it could be turned round. I'd like to think that, but the problem is when you see less and less people participating with each other, and the desensitization to what we see becoming more and more. I'll just go into that for a little bit. I mean, we are being desensitized to bloodbaths on TV. Basically, that's what was. Our children are playing war games on computers, and we sit there on the evenings and turn on the mainstream media and watch people that have been shot in the Ukraine or Afghanistan, or they have been blew up in a plane over the Ukraine, and the more we see this, the threshold, we get desensitized to it. We don't seem to see it as a shocking event anymore. Have you noticed the media are putting more and more gorier scenes on? They're actually showing you the blood that has been poured out of a victim in the street, and that these are civilians in the street. Why do they want to program us with such scenes, and why are they doing it more so now than they ever have done? Why do they want us to see these things, be desensitized to them? I'm just saying that the problem is with this is when you become desensitized to it, when you see larger and larger atrocities, the threshold increases. So you're no longer shocked by this, but you should still be shocked. You know, you should be absolutely flabbergasted when you see bodies strewn all over a field in Afghanistan, in a country where that is already at war, and these people are already, you know, being shot in the street and their houses are being blown up. It's not a normal day's occurrence to watch such things. I mean, I'm surprised some people do watch them and they turn away. For me, why I watch them is because I want to see the truth. I want to see exactly what it is our behaviour is like, and you know, how it's worsening by the day. And it's very, very sad to see these things, you know. I really feel sorry for the families that get caught up in such false flag events. But you know, the Malaysian flight 370, which is, in my view, flight 17, is just one of those events of many. I mean, we had the Twin Towers. You know, that was a big insurance job. You know, people, a great loss of life in such a short space of time. It was very shocking. I don't know what the way you interpret it, guys. I would like to think that you're probably somewhere on the lines of the way I see it. I think it's got to stop, because when you desensitise human beings to the point where it is, you know, it is a daily occurrence to see blood and murder and death, I don't think it's a very. You don't want to live in a society where people, you know, see that daily, because they get desensitised to it. I'm finding it very hard to explain what I'm trying to get here, the point over. You know, we'll end up basically with people that don't care in society about such things as, you know, what we're seeing on the news. That, you know, it will get worse. And do you want to live in a society where they care even less? That's the question, because that is exactly where it's heading. You know, we're all brothers and sisters on this world. It doesn't matter where you come from. We are all brothers and sisters, and we share one thing in common: this planet. And we should be better stewards than what we are. And if we know these people are doing such things, then they should be stopped from doing them. We shouldn't allow them to carry on, continue running the world in which they are, because you judge people by the fruits of their works, and if their fruits of their works is weapons, drugs, murder, then I think you'll agree that that isn't the sort of world or things we want to take place in this world. There is the rest of the universe to be explored, and we are at a technological advancement right now where we could be putting resources into things like that and journeying out. But we need to realise what we're doing is completely wrong here, and that this corruption has got to stop, and that these people that are orchestrating such events as these false flags, you know, and murdering or mass murdering people in the way in which they are, and they're doing it for a shekel, you know, we've got to do something about it. You know, because I do believe there is still a lot of good folk in this world, but that will change, and it's been changed by design, which is the shocking thing. It needs to stop. You know, there's a lot more things you can invest your time and wealth in than guns and bullets and drugs and wars and food that makes people ill in the long run after prolonged usage. I'm talking about GMOs. You know, okay, GMOs might be resolving just one aspect, but they are probably unknitting a lot of other things, like, you know, bees won't go into the fields where GMO crops are, certain GMO crops, and therefore it affects, you know, other diversities of species on the planet. And you know, we could accidentally, through not you know, thinking ahead, wipe out a certain species that could have a detriment impact to our own species. And bees could be one of those for sure, because without them and without the other popular pollination creatures, you know, things won't grow. And it'll be a very tedious task if humans have to start going round with little paintbrushes, you know, fertilising fields of crops. You know, where the question is, guys, is where do we draw a line on this behaviour? And, you know, who is responsible at the end of the day for it? And are we able to find out who they are? Well, I was saying this morning a good port of call would be those on the list of the Bilderberg Group. You know, you could find out what companies they own, what they're attached to. You probably get a foresight as to what they're up to in the future and where their grand scheme plan is going. And but the point is how do we get rid of this problem? These people that are doing this to the majority of the populations on Earth, because we know that they're not very nice people. You know, instead of sending bombs and weapons and drugs all around the world, shouldn't we be sending aid? Shouldn't we be strengthening our distant communities, or, you know, uniting all these countries together, you know, sharing the resources out fairly on the planet? Is that even possible? You know, shouldn't our governments be taking us down that line, that route? The only thing you ever hear about our governments doing these days when they make an announcement is talking about, you know, one war in one country and one war in another. You know, that seems to be the way things go. Guys, I've talked way too long in this, and I just appreciate the fact that you've probably made it to this part of the video. And I'm going to say what I usually do, and that is be safe, and as always, bye for now.